The People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. What is modern day slavery? Australia's Walk Free Foundation defines it as follows. Modern slavery covers a set of specific legal concepts including forced labour, debt bondage, forced marriage, slavery and slavery-like practices and human trafficking. Essentially, it refers to situations of exploitation that a person cannot refuse or leave because of threats, violence, coercion, deception and or abuse of power. Tonight's conversation will focus on what the implications are for the Sri Lankan context. I'm so pleased to welcome back to the studio my guest tonight, women's rights activist Shreen Saroor. Good evening and welcome to the show. Shreen, when we speak about modern day slavery, one cannot but talk about Sri Lanka's migrant workers. What are some of the key issues that we keep coming back to year in, year out?
So when you say migrant workers, they are the backbone of the Sri Lankan economy. Now, if we all are here and no queues, we are eating properly and all those things, it is them. So migrant worker issue, it's an industry, it's a part of economy of our country. But the issues that we are faced with regard to migrant workers is that we are not treating them the way that they need to be treated. They are the labor force that is suffering outside the country to get much needed dollars. So the government has been adopting policies to send as many as possible people out of the country without thinking of in what context we are sending them, where we are sending them. Say, for example, in the recent past, the government has been very proud to say that they have been sending people to various places, including Russia, Ukraine, Israel. These are places where we know that they are going to be placed in grave danger. At the same time, we are also sending in our women labor force mostly to Middle Eastern country where labor rights are very minimum and also in a domestic servitude condition where these women will be within four walls and there is a lot of abuse. So we have been seeing a lot of abuse. 2 years back, our women were sold in sex trade in Oman. Still, as I'm speaking, there are people in Oman and various other countries in prison, our workers, unable to pay their overstay visas. And there is also human smuggling, trafficking involved. And many of these people sometimes don't register. And very interestingly, the government policy is if they don't go register and go, they say that they will not take responsibility. But government is accepting their remittance and they are talking about how they are fixing the economy. But when these migrant women get into trouble, the government pay minimum attention to it. So Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau is supposed to take care of these migrant workers' welfare. But very interestingly, the board involved 4 Foreign Employment Bureau members and 3 government representatives. So when foreign employment agencies are part of a welfare system, one must understand how that will get exploited. So many of the Sri Lankan foreign employment run shelters abroad, particularly in the Middle Eastern countries, how women further suffer because of overcrowding, not looking after them very well and all those things. And government sometimes disown our own workers when they get abused. So these are issues that we need to think about it, because if at all we want to treat our workers a dignified manner for the very remittance that they are sending back home, we need to give them respectful space to do their work. And also when they get into trouble, it is the government responsibility, whether they are registered, unregistered, undocumented, whatever said and done. This is part of our labor force that is working outside and sending much needed remittance dollars to the country to fix our economy. We need to pay attention to it.
Absolutely, Shreen, and also we're talking predominantly about unskilled migrant workers who are at their most vulnerable because people don't just go, for the heck of it. People go due to desperation and being compelled due to having no other option in Sri Lanka. You spoke about this lack of regulation. There is a mafia when it comes to these agencies which aren't registered with the Foreign Employment Bureau. But this set of people needs to be captured, right, by our legal system, because we have the necessary laws and regulations in place. So what kind of work needs to be done? What are the loopholes that you see as someone who's working on the ground?
See, Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau should be a regulatory body. So it should involve the migrant worker themselves. Now, one of the sector where you don't see labor union, because we have trade unions for various sectors, garment industries or upcountry, Malaya Makkals, tea plantation and all those people. Even though whether it's working or not is a different thing, but at least they can voice.
Okay.
But migrant worker issue is a bit complex because they are not unionized at all. Then they are also not entitled for vote. We don't have absentee ballots. So politically also they can't, send in their representation. At the same time, Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau has 7 men sitting as board of directors, not a single woman. But most of the migrant workers are women, and workers themselves need to be on the board.
Sure.
And then it has to be a monitoring regulatory body. But the Sri Lanka Employment Bureau is doing is they themselves are recruiting people. They are also taking money from the workers. Workers have to register. When they register, they have to pay 21,400. Out of that, 70% goes to recruitment agencies. This is their money, and then 10% goes to their insurance, workers' insurance. 20% goes to Sri Lankan Foreign Employment Bureau. What we have been articulating is why can't that 70% go to their insurance so that they are well looked after? Say the last 3 months, government is saying registered migrant workers are 75,000 odd. Out of that, 43 or 44% of them are migrant women workers, right? Imagine how much money that they are paying it to government, right? Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau is one of the surplus organization that makes profit. So when there is a body like that, that body need to regulate and look after the welfare of the workers. It seems like they are looking after the welfare of the agency to me whenever that we approach them because of the representation itself. The other thing is the Labour Ministry and the Foreign Affairs Ministry. The diplomats themselves always palm it down to the Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau. Even in foreign Middle Eastern countries, we have our consulates, but they won't take the migrant worker issues. So Sri Lankan bureaucrats need to be trained to take responsibility, because under the Vienna Convention they are there to look after their citizens. So when the citizens get into trouble, they are saying it's Foreign Employment Bureau. Then when we talk to the Foreign Employment Bureau, then they say Labour Ministry. So there is not a coordinated effort by the government to look after these people. The other thing is we also have to give skill to these people. During economic crisis, immediately after the new government took over, they gave this 5-year leave for the skilled workers, government workers and also to take leave and go. They didn't even think about brain drain that we would suffer. So many of them went with the family. They are not going to send the remittance. People who are going to send the remittance are unskilled workers, right? So we should strengthen our relationship with labor receiving countries. We on and off we have signed bilateral agreement, but those are not very effective, right? So some countries like Philippines demands from Middle Eastern countries about sending their migrant workers, right? At the same time, locally also we have to strengthen the migrant workers' voices. And also when these migrant workers come back, they are also coming with the skill. All of a sudden somebody from the home is being just put in the plane and sent. She's working in the Middle Eastern countries for 3, 4, 5 years there, and she learns Arabic. she knows how to manage in a foreign country. When she comes back, she shouldn't spend all the money and go back again as migrant worker. The Sri Lankan government should have a social security network so that when she comes back, she can start her own livelihood. And her knowledge and her ability to learn language, new skill should be, government should invest on that. So those are the things that
hasn't been done yet?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay. So, Shreen, for the purpose of completeness of this conversation, what if a representative from the Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau were to rebut you by saying, no, look, we invest in training. We don't just randomly put women on a plane and send them without any training or language skills? How would you respond?
So, my conversation with some of the officials, they are agreeing that women are going, and they are washing their hands saying that these are illegal migration. They are not going through a boat or something. No, they are going through our immigration department, right? They are obtaining a passport. They are cutting across our border, right? So Sri Lankan government has to take responsibility how these people are put on a plane and sent. It's not happening without their knowledge, right? So during economic crisis, lots of people went on temporary visa. Government knows, because when they cut across, the immigration officer is checking what visa that they are going. So month visa, so they go there, and then the agency fixes their job. If they don't get a job, then they are stranded, and the government says we are not responsible. So the thing is that the government has to carefully look at, because of the economic crisis, there is a huge burden on the poorest of the poor, particularly women. They are even cutting down meal than compared to the men, because they have to feed their children and men, right? And also during COVID time and in the post-war context, particularly in the north and the east, there was a lot of mushrooming finance companies. So many of these women borrowed money, single-headed household women, and they thought they can do a decent livelihood. But then the COVID and economic crisis, they couldn't earn any money. Then they were bonded to this debt. So then many of these finance company agents became the recruitment agents. So they say, if you are unable to pay, look, we will do your passport and then 1 month visa and all, we'll send you, and then you have to work. So very interestingly, this is happening in a very organized manner, and these women have to get onto the plane and go. So one thing the government has to understand, that these women are not going for pleasure. They are going because this is bondage labor. It is the part of modern day slavery, and the government has acknowledged the fact that women and men are smuggled out, and it's not only acknowledged in country but internationally in various review, ICCPR review and UPR review that happened in Geneva Circle. Government came and said that they are going. Right? But then every time we ask, what are you doing about it? We have set up a task force. Sri Lanka is famous for its task force and committees. So they very interesting part of this whole process is that government is not only acknowledging the fact that they are going like this without much training, without much checks and balances, but they are acknowledging the fact that the money is coming. The dollars are coming. So what they need to do is they have to have a scrutiny of all these foreign employment agencies. These agencies that are just abruptly taking people and sending abroad need to be carefully monitored. The other thing is, Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau has to be on the side of the migrant worker. It seems like they are on the side of the employment agency, unfortunately.
Okay. Finally, before going in for a break, Shreen, I feel like we also need to talk about this issue from at a high level. So in terms of diplomatic relations between Sri Lanka and other countries, specifically in the Middle East, which is where a lot of our unskilled labor goes. Why is it that we tend to hear about women coming back beaten, bruised, raped, with nails in their bodies, and nothing is being done at a sort of state level?
It's very difficult for us to talk about these issues because 36 of our women in 2022 October were sold in human sex market in Oman. And our second officer in the Oman embassy was part of it, and he was arrested brought back to the country. So far we don't know what kind of a legal action government has taken. Right? It was not easy to bring those women back home. It was a struggle. We have to go to Supreme Court. Right? So why I'm taking this issue is every time our women are abused and come, two things happens. One is they try to compensate if possible. And or else they vilify these people, saying under what condition that they went and all those things. But we rarely use our diplomatic relationship to salvage the future migration process and all those things. Very interestingly, Sri Lankan government very openly, Labour Minister say that we have very pro-migration policy. Even they had this the checks and balances for any woman who wants to go as domestic workers or any unskilled form of work. If she has a age 5 below child, need to get a certificate. We were opposing all of it, but when they have pro-migration policy, they let loose all of those things. Right? So we have some good labour policies, but I think with the economic crisis we are just going very low level, bottom level with regard to rights, labour rights. At the same time, we can't also influence those countries, and because those countries where the migrant domestic workers go in, there we have very minimum labour standards, and Middle Eastern countries it's extremely difficult for us to bargain. Very interestingly that the government bilateral even agreements they have not talked about. Say for example, when somebody overstay, when there is a penalty kicking in, it is the foreign employment, it is the foreign ministry that need to negotiate with the foreign minister of that country. That kind of a dialogue I don't see happening, because foreign ministry overtly now is all about building relationship and getting as much as assistance possible, debt relief to loans to everything to Sri Lanka, and also most of our diplomatic relationship that we want to keep intact with the Western countries and all. So the Middle Eastern countries where our migrant workers are going in large numbers don't get that attention.
Yeah, so it's not prioritized.
Yeah, it is not priority. They are not seeing, they don't send capable workers. And every time we call the Sri Lankan foreign employment, Sri Lankan missions abroad, they always say, you call the foreign employment bureau because the shelters are run by them. We can't. Even to take a telephone call, because the foreign employment bureau shelters in foreign Middle Eastern countries doesn't have telephone. So they can't call once they go in. So the mission has to give the phone. So, in order to negotiate the Sri Lankan consulate to give a phone call to a migrant domestic worker who is in the Sri Lankan Foreign Employment Bureau shelter, welfare shelter, is a huge struggle for us to work on this. So if the ministries and the welfare body is not working collectively together, this itself shows where we are, what we are doing to our own workers. Because we are looking down upon these workers. Then how can we ask others to treat our workers properly?
Okay. So there's a lot to be done with regard to protecting and ensuring their human rights and labour rights.
Yes.
We're going for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
The People's Platform.
TV1. TV for life. Anura Kumara ready to debate with Sajith Premadasa. Dr. Nalinda will coordinate the debate. SLFP Politburo meets and appoints Nimal Siripala as acting chairman. Acting SLFP General Secretary says Politburo meeting not legal. SLPP and GL have taken control of SJB, says President. SJB's Samagi Buddhi Mandapaya held in Colombo. Air Force rugby player killed in police fire. Another shooting in Gampaha results in a death. Activists meet the trade minister to demand an end to exploitation from essentials.
TV1. TV for life. The People's Platform.
Welcome back. I'm in conversation with women's rights activist Shreen Saroor. Before the break, we were discussing the implications of modern day slavery for Sri Lanka. We were discussing its effects on migrant workers. Shreen, we also need to talk about how this disproportionately impacts upcountry workers, free trade zone workers. I'd like your perspectives on this national plan of action that Sri Lanka has based on UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in relation to women, their full participation in decision making in post-conflict Sri Lanka. So there's a 5-year plan in place. There's a very comprehensive document. What's happening?
So this was developed in 2023. Immediately after our president, who is the current Minister of Women's Affairs, in the context of making sure that the inequalities that are being created due to war and also the traditional structural inequalities to be addressed. So it has thematic areas involving law reforms to economic empowerment of women and women's political participation and women in various public sphere. And also, like, it talks about violence against women, particularly in relation to human security, because the UN Resolution 1325 talks about women, peace and security.
Right.
So in the post-war context, Sri Lanka, to walk towards peace, this particular plan can be utilized in the next we have 4 more years to build bridges across the communities, and also making sure how women are part of various processes in the public sphere, including increasing women's representation in politics. Already we had 25% quota for the local authority women. Provincial Council Act has 25% women's representation in politics, and also now the parliament election, forthcoming parliament election, many of us are asking for not only quota but also various form of affirmative action to increase women at that level, because more recently the president himself made a statement saying he is going to reform, or he is going to bring in about 100 odd laws. Already he has passed about 42 laws. These are happening without single minority women being consulted in the parliament. And also not only minority women, many of the participation with regard to civil society or average people with regard to lawmaking in Sri Lanka is minimizing. There is no consultation whatsoever, and we also have created a trend in parliament that the simple majority is sometimes 18 or 20 member of parliament members voting. We are getting bills becoming act of parliament. So it is very important that conscious women get into politics and talk about these issues. So we talked about modern day slavery, and mostly women are in modern day slavery. So it's not only domestic work abroad, but domestic work in Sri Lanka. And also maybe the clothes that you are wearing I'm wearing came out of slave labor condition. The tea that we drink definitely comes from the slave labor, 200 years of slavery that we have in this country. They don't own a piece of land in this country. They can't. They are bonded labor to the factories, right? So, and then the garment factory workers who are also again bringing in such a lot of dollars to the country to fix our economy. So these women's not only appreciating their dollar, their dollar making ability, but also to make sure that they have enough social security. Right, and they also skill-wise go upwards. The upward mobility is very important, and also the economic empowerment of the women is also very important. So this particular action plan talks to all those things. But what I see is it's all talk. It's all like people are sitting and talking. Nothing is materializing, and particularly with regard to violence against women in Sri Lanka, the rate it is increasing. And also the informal sector women, particularly the domestic workers and the caregiving industry and the cleaners, and these are the first buffer for us to exist like the way that we are existing, and the protection is very minimum. Very interestingly, yesterday the government said that they are increasing the minimum wage from 12,500 to 17,500. I mean, what is that? I mean, like 300% our cost of living has in products have increased, the milk powder to everything, the electricity bill, the water bill. Can anybody survive in Sri Lanka with 17,500? At the same time, many studies have shown like a family of 4 needs 60,000. So these are women's issues as well, because at the end of the day, if there is no money, it is the women who will be going hungry, and they will be forced to earn. So that's why it's very important that we start implementing some of these plans rather than just looking at this in a written form.
Yeah.
I don't see much being happening there.
My final question to you, Shreen, is what is stopping us from implementing these national plans?
So it's interestingly, I would say, how these plans are coming to Sri Lanka. We get donors, international donors coming in and telling us to do this and that, and the ministries get money, and some consultants comes in and then they do map out these things, and then there is this book of plan and all those things. So previously also we had lots of national action plans.
Sure, but there are instances where this format has worked.
Yes, of course, it has worked. But the thing is the political will. Right, that's what I'm talking about. And also how these ministries are taking this responsibility, because every time a government change, we are also changing our plan. A political party, new political party taking over, the entire ministry plan, action and everything changes. So we need to have a system, a long-term system. Who is in power, the bureaucrats, the administrators continue to implement things. Whereas because we have the public administration has got unfairly politicized. So therefore, every ministry secretary or every public administrator is taking direction from politician, from the top to the bottom level. So therefore, we can't implement something for a longer period of time. So therefore, we are completely failing our, people of this country.
All right. Shreen, Saroor, thank you for sharing your perspectives. Very sobering thoughts indeed. Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.